for checking out the Sportsline Podcast on the CHCH Media platform and Parrot. I'm Bubba O'Neill. As I say on a daily basis, this podcast is a space to highlight the outstanding athletes, coaches, teams, broadcasters, and executives from Southern Ontario. Today, we open the spectrum to how we consume sports and the business that surrounds it. You know, folks, in my over 30 years of covering Major League sports, there really have been only a few outlets that talk about sports from a media perspective. Whether it's from a financial ratings or who's getting hired or fired, Jonah Sigel always reports the news first. Folks, with so much happening in the Canadian sports landscapes on and off the playing surface, from YYZ Sports Media, Jonah, thanks for joining us all the way from the left coast. Appreciate your time.
That is an awesome intro, but I gotta ruin it. I'm actually in downtown Toronto right now.
Are you?
I'm enjoying today's warmth and sunshine. It's been bloody freezing here. Like, what the hell's going on? But it is a beautiful afternoon here today. Beautiful morning here today. So, yeah, I'm in Toronto for a little bit, visiting some family, having some meetings. So, soaking in the YYZ. I don't ever call it that. It's YYZ. Come on now.
Zeke, come on now. I know. Hey, you know what? Let's do this first. You know, I know you're a huge Toronto sports fan, but you are based out in Washington State. Can you kind of explain how that whole dynamic works for you?
It might be easier if I give you the history, right? Like, so yeah. I've been U.S. based. You had it up there. I went to school in the States. I moved back to Toronto. I had two little kids, and I was, I hate silence. You know, this is driving me nuts right now. I hate silence. I used to have sports radio on in my office all the time. And to settle my mind, I have a very busy brain, to settle my mind at the night, I created a website called, I got lucky, the URL was available, torontosportsmedia.com. And I just started typing. I can't believe what Bob McCowan said today. I can't believe Damien Cox wrote today. And I wasn't doing it for anybody. I was just doing it for myself. And the one promise that I made to myself was, don't be personal. And if somebody said something smart one day, say it. And if the same person said something stupid the next day, say it. And that's all I ever did. And somebody who's pretty big and famous in the business reached out to me about a month later and said, hey, I really like what you're doing. If I can ever help you, let me know. And that just kept happening over and over and over again. And what happened was, from a career perspective, I got moved out to Seattle once for Starbucks, awesome opportunity. And I just kept writing. And then I moved back to Toronto and I just kept writing and started hosting a podcast. And then I got moved back to Seattle 9-10 years ago. And I've just continued. And, I spend more time in Toronto now, and I don't know where I'm going to end up, kind of looking at the marketplace now for my next opportunity, but I've just never really stopped. And what's happened that's interesting is, as you noted, the rest of the world has evolved and the sports media coverage is kind of disintegrated, especially in Canada. Mm-hmm. And there's not many of us left covering it. So that's a long-winded answer to your question.
No, but it really does explain, because I know there was so many people that have read your work over the years, some that are right directly in the industry like myself, and some that are just sports fans, but yet I have to admit, there's this cloud of mystery about you, right? So you just kind of clarified a lot of stuff about your history, so certainly appreciate that. Let's start with this. Go ahead.
Let me address, I don't know why there's a mystery. I mean, you're a member of the media, I'm a member of the media, kind of. I've never professed to be an expert. I say this all the time. If you follow me on Twitter at YYZ Sports Media, I've never professed to be an expert. I've never taken a class. I'm a fan. So what I write is opinion. What I've been blessed with as a result of my education and my upbringing is relationships. So I don't report anything unless I have really good sources and really good information. So I've been proven that I don't write junk. The things that I write and I report a story come true. But I'm pretty accessible. Anyone that's ever tried to reach me has. And I'm just going to tell you one quick story. I once wrote a story about somebody, and they reached out to me and they said, hey, you got a fact wrong. Do you want to know? And I said, yes. And they said, why? I said, well, I'm going to correct it. And it was a stupid little detail. And they're like, you're really going to correct it? I said, yeah, I don't want to get it wrong. Like, that's dumb. And that person and I have become friends ever since. But, I don't know if there's like this cloud of secrecy. The secrecy is who my sources are, but nobody gives up the right?
Well, let's just put it this way. You've got top-notch inside information. I mean, I remember I spent a dozen years at Sportsnet, and there are stories that you were breaking that I myself and many other people working there at the time didn't even know about, or at least at the very least, you always seem to get first. So certainly an amount of respect for you and the way you have handled yourself amongst the media. And as you said, it's been changing over the years, but you always seem to have a good grip on it. So hence, that's why I'm going to ask you this question here. Toronto, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Ottawa, Montreal now in the NHL playoffs. How much of a win is this for Rogers Communications?
Well, it depends. Like, it's a great story today. Mm-hmm. It's good for round one. Let's see what happens, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that they're all in round one means there'll be a lot of eyeballs in round one. With all due respect to everybody, what we saw last year when Edmonton made it to the finals, the Canadian eyeballs didn't translate all that well. Nobody likes to admit this, but the only market that generates a whole lot of eyeballs is the one that you and I are sitting in. It's a good story, and maybe this year it'll be different. There's a lot going on geopolitically that could change things. It'd be really great if a Canadian team not just advanced to the finals, but actually won. But from a dollars and cents perspective, hockey's a regional sport. And the biggest market is Toronto, and the one that's going to move the needle is Toronto. If Toronto gets bounced early, the other ones being around doesn't help. Maybe Montreal does a little bit. We just got to be honest. If it's Winnipeg that sticks around the longest, it's a nice story. Financially speaking, I just don't think it moves the needle.
Do you think moving the needle would be starting off with the Leafs and Senators? I kind of feel like that's a match made in heaven. You're going all the way back. I mean, you and I are of a vintage where we remember those 4 series which were dominated by Toronto and almost at one point seemed to get boring, but here we go again.
I don't think it ever got boring. How much do we all wish we had a rivalry? Like, the Leafs haven't had a real rivalry in ages. So I think, I think it's terrific. Don't get me wrong. I love it. I hope that the hate is on in both cities for the opponent. I remember the Alfredson, I remember that battle. That is the last time we've actually had meaningful hockey here. I'm not just saying it. We miss that badly. I'm so psyched for my kids, even though neither of them live in the city, who are hockey fans, to get to watch it. To bring that passion back to this city is a really good thing. I would imagine they're excited in Ottawa. There is nothing better than a good, healthy sports hate between two markets. And the last time these two markets had it, it was fantastic.
I look at it from a Sens perspective in some ways, too, only naturally because here in Hamilton, the Bulldogs were owned by Michael Andlauer and the GM was Steve Staios. And upon owning the team, the Sens, and of course, with Staios now being his right-hand man, I've heard from Michael Andlauer so many times, and I think he even said it in his introductory purchase presser, is that we're tired of being Ontario's other team. And I hopefully think that is, something that gets the Ottawa region all jacked up as well.
Yeah, I don't know how to comment on it. Listen, it depends on what that means. It'd be really nice for them in that market if they go well and they advance and they win the Stanley Cup. Realistically speaking, what does that mean? Are fans in Toronto and in other parts of Ontario going to start cheering for Ottawa? I don't see it. Whatever. Are they actually going to compete for the eyeballs that, Hockey Night in Canada gets in Ottawa? No, that's just not going to happen. But whatever. It's a good story. They came from nowhere. That market has been dead. It is good for everybody that we have vibrant markets, vibrant hockey markets across the league. That is just a fact. So I can't stand the Senators. I have more hatred towards the Senators than the Canadians. Why? Because we were rivals more recently than them. The Montreal's been so bad for so long, where there's nothing going on between a Leaf fan and a Canadians fan. So yeah, listen, I'm glad. I think it's going to be super fun to have the hate on again between the Sens and the Leafs because it brings back such a visceral memory.
let's look at the big picture here. Just, weeks ago, Rogers and NHL, they announced a 12-year, $11 billion agreement. In your opinion, and I guess this will kind of forecast itself, but we can also look back to their other contract. Do you see this as good value and overpay? I can only look at it in some ways, too, from my days at Sportsnet since I've come to CHCH. From the time that deal was done, all I can think about personally is lost jobs. But anyway, your perspective.
Well, one of my favorite movies of all time is with Rodney Dangerfield. It's called Back to School. And there's a scene when Rodney's in the dean's office, and one of the business school professors says to the dean, like, why are you letting this guy in? And the dean looks at the professor and says, you need to understand the size of the check involved. And look, like, people may not like Gary Bettman, and he gets booed everywhere. But when he goes into that room with the owners, he's walking away with a big bleeping check from the Canadian rights holder. And we all should be paying, we're not worthy to Gary Bettman for what he has delivered. I don't know how Rogers is going to make money on this. I think they've overspent again, but I think the landscape is changing. As you know, we're now doing a podcast together. Did you ever think in your lifetime you'd be doing a podcast as opposed to a TV show or a radio show? No, these are changing times, friend. And, I'm sitting in a hotel room. There's an LG television up on the wall. That television and how we consume content is changing. So it is very unlikely that my kids and your kids or our grandkids are going to subscribe to something called cable, but they are going to consume sports content. How they pay for that, I have no idea. Is it going to be through Apple? Is it going to be through Amazon? Is it going to be through Google? We have no idea, but ultimately the rights holder is going to be Rogers, and somehow they're going to get that check. They're going to get that fee. Are they going to sub-license more games to Amazon? Likely. The French channel is going to pay for their portion of it. So I think, is it too much money? Yes. None of my business. It's not my money. I don't know how they make money on it. That's what they wanted to do. But I think the story has to unfold. And I do think we have to remember that it's not just cable rights, it's other rights as well.
Was this a slap in the face to Bell and TSN?
Is this a slap in the face? I think that Gary Bettman is smart. And while no official bid or counterbid was made because their window of exclusivity was extended, I think Gary knew exactly what he could get or couldn't get back from the other side. So I don't think it was a slap in the face. I don't think Bell was going to play in this sandbox.
Fair enough. Blue Jays off to the good start this season, inking Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to this 14-year, $500 million deal. Obviously, you've got the Bo Bichette situation, too, very, very similar. At the end of the day, was signing this deal for Vladdy himself and the Blue Jays, that coming together, was that really a must for the Blue Jays?
So now we're diving into the world of sports themselves. So now I'm really speaking as a fan because this is not my bread and butter. My opinion is this is mismanagement 101. This is finally ownership stepping in and going, what the bleep are you doing? And yeah, they had to do it. They absolutely had to do it. Why? Because the casual fan who isn't in, all the statistics that the diehard fan is, they want to see Vladdy. They want to go to the Dome. They want to watch Vladimir Guerrero Jr. They don't care what he's going to look like in 5 years as a DH. They want to see the man. They want to see him come up to bat. They want to see the smile. They want to know that the homegrown talent is going to be playing the vast majority of games when he's there. And that's what's going to encourage them to buy the jerseys, to buy the popcorn, and to show up for games. And at the end of the day, the money doesn't matter to the casual fans. They don't know what slashing numbers are, wars are. They don't care what any of those statistics are. And that's who's going to fill the building. And ultimately, they were willing to spend gobs of money on people outside the organization. They need to send the message to the internal teams and to the free agents that a guy who grew up and made his way all the way up, who's seen as one of the biggest names in the game, they were willing to write a check. And the fact that they were lazy and they blew it and they could have written a check years ago and probably saved $150 million. Shame on them, but they absolutely had to write this check.
You know, I thought it was kind of a strange love-in. I don't know how you felt it with the press conference, Edward Rogers there. It just seemed like this one big celebration that they tried to put on, and the media directed some questions, which I thought maybe might have been uncomfortable for Edward, but he continued to just say that this makes us a destination point. Your thoughts on the Rogers side of this? I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean, and I don't know how comfortable they are spending that amount of money. And I know it is their product in the sense of being on television. But I guess this was something, again, as you said, they kind of had to do.
Look, we can say a lot of things, but you have to take a step back and look at Edward Rogers Jr. and say, the guy has been a fantastic owner. And I'm going to say that again. The guy has been a fantastic owner. As it relates to the Blue Jays, he has one blemish in my mind. He hired the wrong two guys, maybe. And if you say he hasn't hired the wrong two guys, he's empowered them too long, and he's allowed the leash to go too long, and he hasn't held them to a standard of winning. Timeout. Next point. The guy has written check after check after check and allowed them to do whatever they want. And what fan doesn't want that in an owner? He put a ton of dough into that god-awful building, $400 million. He rebuilt Dunedin. And then at the same time, he has taken a team that was, top 15, whatever, in payroll to top 10. Now they're top 5. Like, what more do you want in an owner as a fan? The guy writes the checks, he empowers his people to do their jobs, and he leaves them alone. So we got to give kudos to the guy. Like, he's clearly awkward in the spotlight. He doesn't like to be there. That was very apparent. It almost looked to me like these guys had actually never met each other before. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, really. Like, he clearly stepped up and said, we've got to get this done. Why? It's going to sell more phones. It's going to sell more cable, and it's going to fill more seats. Because ultimately, here's what we know. At the end of the day, if this team is sniffing competitiveness come August into September, that barn will be full. I think it holds 40 now.
Yep.
If they're sniffing wild card, they will fill that place 40 every night. The TV ratings will be through the roof, and the few of us that still listen to radio will be listening. They'll be selling merch. They'll be selling food. They'll be selling beer. They'll be selling season tickets, and that's the why. If you can get close and if you can sniff, they've proven it every single time. We fans are short for fanatics. We'll fill it up. We'll soak it up. We'll love them, and we will believe. And you just got to give him credit. It was weird. Why was it weird? Because he's awkward. He doesn't like being in that spotlight. Okay, we don't need him to be in the spotlight. Let's talk about teams in other sports where they are right now ready to strangle their owner because they won't stroke the check. All this guy does is write checks. Look at Pittsburgh, look at Seattle, look at Detroit, where their payrolls are minuscule. And on opening day, they've already declared, let's wait till next year. Our guy, all he does is write checks. What's he guilty of? He's put his power into two guys that have proven to be complete failures.
You know, you brought up something there when you said about listening to radio. I'm going to kind of open this up here to like Sportsnet and TSN and even their radio brands as well, too. You talk about the signing of the deal. And one thing I did, and you're probably very similar to what you did for many, many years when you were in this market, I went to the radio. And I pleasured, honestly, in listening to Jeff Blair take phone calls. Take phone calls, listening to fans. That's something I think of, like Leafs talk for many, many years, listening to, even going as far back as Hebsher, taking phone calls, which were hilarious. And I enjoyed it, listening to the fans and what their reaction was. But you just don't get that anymore. From a radio TV perspective, and I know they're separate entities, but I look at Sportsnet and TSN, and I'm almost wondering, is there a future in terms of Canadian programming for radio and television with those brands? Because that's where we go for our sports.
Well, I think you have to separate the two.
Okay.
Let's stick to what you call radio. Mm-hmm. And the lawyer comes out a little bit, and let's not use terminology. And let's call it audio consumption. And there is absolutely a massive market for sports audio consumption. And I'm going to take a step back a little bit and say there's a huge market for sports content consumption beyond just games. So this is, I assume we're recording video. I assume you're going to put this on something like YouTube. YouTube is now the dominant place for people to watch sports content other than games, right? So Barstool, other places like that are pushing a ton of video sports content like this. And people younger than you and I are consuming it ad hoc in droves, right? So that takes care of the video side of it. On the audio side, it's the same thing. So, I can open up my podcaster any day of the week, and it doesn't matter whether I'm in Beijing, Singapore, London, New York City, Seattle, or Toronto. I can listen to the Nick Kiprio show, or I can listen to Overdrive. And here's the best part. I can pick and choose which segments I want to listen to on which day. I can listen to it whenever I want. I don't have to listen to it live. And that's the beauty of audio consumption today. What you said is that you like to listen to radio. And to me, when I hear the term radio, I hear and think about the car. And if people aren't in the car, they're not going to listen to live radio. That's my own personal reflection. Unless you're getting your teeth cleaned in a dentist chair or something like it, you're not listening to live radio. And, people get into the car in the morning in their commute. If they're going to an office, they'll listen to live radio. But even still, I get into the car now, I'm either listening to Spotify or Apple Music, depending on which one I have. Depending on my mood, I'm either listening to sports content or I'm listening to music or some other type of podcast. So does consumption still exist tomorrow for those brands? Absolutely. Does it exist as you and I know it? Absolutely not. I don't think so. I think it all changes on what you call it. And I don't think labels really matter.
It's interesting, yeah, because I feel like I am part of this sort of crossover of what we used to and how we used to consume sports, and I find myself, having to, quote, switch and change my brain and my patterns, and sometimes that's tough, right? Especially for someone like myself, nearly 60 years old, right? I find it tough sometimes, but I have to, and you're right, there is so much content out there, and you're right, Spotify has so many sports podcasts out there, and I'm learning to enjoy it. But I find it sometimes weird because sometimes I want that immediacy. If there is a trade or something happens that moment, or someone gets whacked, someone gets fired, I want instant reaction. And sometimes the podcast doesn't give that to me. But I guess I surrender. That's just the way it is.
But those hosts generally are the ones that you want to hear from for the most part. They're on radio stations, not everybody. Mm-hmm. So, unfortunately, McCowan's not on anymore. So if big news breaks and he was on the air, it'd be great to listen to him. You talked about Blair. If something big broke with the Jays and he was on, you could go to 590.com or to an actual radio and turn the dial or push the buttons to 590 and listen to him.
Yep.
Right? Like, something big happens, you can listen to a live radio show and listen. That is still available to you. The beauty of it is you can listen to it live at your convenience when you're available to. Not everyone has the ability, as you know, to tune in at the time, even though it's being broadcast live. The fact that we can go back and listen to it at our leisure when we're capable, when we're free, is the added benefit of the technological medium today.
Are people still watching highlight shows?
I don't believe they're doing that. I think they're going to their mobile device and they're watching it on YouTube or on something else. Listen, there's more content consumption on TikTok and Instagram of sports than there is on Sportsnet, ESPN, or any of those. They're all blowing their brains out. Why? Because we all have attention deficit disorder and we're all watching things in 30-second clips. That's why. So are they watching it? Absolutely. Do they want to tune in and watch those nightly shows? No. Who has the patience for that? We don't have the attention span for that anymore. We want to watch what we want to watch. So every night, my son, who's 22, who's in college in the States, will send me a text and go, "Oh my God, did you see this goal?" Or "Holy crap, did you see this fight?" And I don't need to wait for the next version of SportsCenter, Canada or the US to pop up on my TV. I can watch it right then and there.
I thought about this while I was watching the kickoff to the Northern Super League in Vancouver and how women's sports right now, the PWHL, the WNBA coming to Toronto. I'm even seeing an increase in women's boxing and MMA. Is this a place, I've been saying this for a little bit, that if I had multiple $1 million, I might plop $1 million on women's sports because I think it's going somewhere. Do you agree?
Are you asking me, do I think that women's sports is a viable market?
Sure.
Yeah, listen, my daughter played hockey here in Toronto and in Seattle. Do we want alternative programming to what you and I grew up with? Absolutely. Do I think it's going to be as dominant as the NHL, Major League Baseball, and the traditional? No, I don't think it's going to be there. But guess what? It doesn't have to be. That's okay, right? There are freaks in both sports, in both genders, that we will tune in to watch, and that is awesome. Look at tennis, right? We've had phenomenal female tennis players, and we loved watching them. They're great stories. They're fantastic athletes. So why not, right? Like, you don't have to compete. Not everything needs to be compared. There are compelling stories. There are great athletes to watch, teams, what have you. I think that the more content we get, the better. And there are absolutely eyeballs. Why? Because there's parents out there that want to take their girls out and show them that they too can matter just as their sons or other boys can be, and they can exist, and they can go get scholarships, and they can learn up, and they can learn all the incredible things that come from playing either individual or team sports. So do I think it's viable? Absolutely. Do I think it's going to be as big? No. Do I think that matters? No.
One last thing here, and this is the first time I've done this as a sportscaster with my 6 or 7 minute sportscast here at CHCH. I did not run a clip of Masai Ujiri's season-ending press conference because it kind of went in one ear and went out the other ear. We all know they were 30-52. The word rebuild was used from the very beginning, and I don't even know if I showed highlights to every game like I normally would. Your thoughts on where the Raptors are right now, and in fact, if you want to go even broader, the NBA?
Well, I don't think the NBA is going anywhere, except I saw yesterday that there's massive declines in local TV ratings. That doesn't surprise me. The NBA is a fantastic league. Just watch what happens in the playoffs with TNT, with their ratings, and people are watching it. People like the NBA. It's not going anywhere. Here in the local market, I've been here for a week. I've spent time talking to lots of people about the Raptors. The Raptors are, I hate to say it, they're a niche market. They don't compete with the Leafs unless they're winning. When they're winning, just like the Blue Jays, if they're winning, they'll fill up the the Scotiabank Arena. Listen, the Raptors won. They've got a more recent championship than anybody else. But, what have you done for me lately? And that counts for the current president and the GM. They can't rest on that anymore. And they've had some pretty lean, lousy years since they won, and they own that. So what's the value of their personal stock plus the value of the team? We're going to see what happens. I didn't watch the press conference at all. So, the fact that you didn't mention it is a first. This is the first time I didn't watch it. The Raptor games that I watched this year, I didn't watch to watch the team. I watched because I actually really like the broadcast crew. I think we have one of the best crews in the game. And I'm not just saying that because I'm from Toronto. They are genuinely entertaining. They sell a lot more sizzle when the steak ain't so good. And that is a credit to their production team and to the guys and gals on air.
You're talking about Jack and Devlin?
Yeah, whoever else is on, there's a bunch of people that are on that team, and I think they're fantastic, all of them. It's a really great product, and it's entertaining when the basketball itself is pretty meh. And that says a lot because I am a Raptor fan, not a basketball fan. So to me, where's the team? They're in no man's land. They're all sitting there going, what I heard from a bunch of people who are Raptor fans this weekend, they're on a wing and a prayer. They think, people that I trust said they're going to make the playoffs next year. Okay. That doesn't give me a whole lot of optimism, by the way. I either want a championship or I want to be last. That's where I'm at. I'm sorry. I either want the first pick or I want to win it all. And they're kind of on a wing and a prayer that they may win the lottery this year. That doesn't make me feel a whole lot of comfort. But that's me. And I am not a basketball fan. So we'll see where they're at.
Let me throw one last thing to you, because you bring up his name, and I know it's close to your heart, and it is to me too, because we both listened and consumed Bob McCown as a broadcaster, as a businessman, as an interviewer. Do we have anyone in the business that is even close to him? Obviously, he's the guy that made a lot of money for the Fan 590 over the years in terms of advertising. But I don't know. I always considered him the best at what he did. And I don't know if someone said, hey, who's the best in radio now? Or who's the best in TV? I don't know if I can answer that question.
He has not been replaced from a talent and capability standpoint, in my opinion. There is nobody out there that has replicated what he was able to do, nor bring in the audience, nor the guest list that show did. Having said that, I'm going to duck when I say this, kind of. The only person that has the draw that he did right now is Jeff O'Neill. Jeff on the Overdrive show is pretty flippin' big, right? That show does really well. That show is really entertaining. And with all due respect to Brian and Jamie, it's the Jeff O'Neill show. People are watching to hear what Jeff is going to say. And that doesn't mean, I will say this again, I am not saying that Jeff O'Neill is Bob McCown. He can't interview him like him. But people do tune in to hear what he is going to say, what his opinion is. So you talked about when something happens, you want to hear live radio. When something on the Leafs happen, they want to hear Jeff's take. And there's not too many people like that in the market. So is he Bob McCown? No. Does it feel a little bit like it, though, when something happens? Yes, it does.
Jonah, this has been fabulous talking sports with you. After all these years of, I said, consuming your content and, reading your stuff, whether it be online or even on your website. Again, where can people catch you? You do have the podcast, and of course, you have the website.
Number one place is Twitter. I'm always on Twitter at YYZ Sports Media. The website is YYZSportsMedia.com. And the podcast is Bleav, BLEAV, In the Pressrow. But you can just find it. Again, I post it all over the place. I'm everywhere.
Really appreciate your time, and it's been great meeting you, sir.
Likewise, another one of the millions of people that I talk to in the business who I have never met. So it is good to finally see you.
All right, my friend. Take care. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
That's your Sportsline Podcast for the day. And as you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline Podcast, we want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you have something to say, we appreciate your comments always. For the outstanding people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so very much. And we'll see you tomorrow.